Yo, Pokey26 here, and I am going to check out the new-ish PTR patch now. It's 2.0.4 for Warcraft 3. I think there was already a previous iteration, and then this one went further or did more. Maybe it did a lot more. I'm not totally sure. But I do see that there's like a master change log as well. And I did see at some point that there was some sort of change for Dark Ranger. But yeah, we're gonna go through this. I'll look at that real quick as well. I did glance over it to see whether it was, worth talking about or whatever, especially for someone like me who hasn't played very much Warcraft lately. I have played a little. I have noticed the Dark Ranger, for instance. I've played enough to have seen her in action and the sort of playstyles that come with it. So I'm sure the base game is still somewhat similar to what I know to begin with. But yeah, should be able to talk about things at least to some extent. Yeah, if you go to the master change list here, it does look like most of these changes are the same as what's listed above, but I mostly wanted to talk about this one first. So I think this was in the previous iteration. I'm not sure if this was like one of the only changes in the previous iteration or if some of these other ones were here too, but then they further changed or tweaked them. But yeah, we'll talk about this first with the Dark Ranger. And first thing you see, mana cost increased. I do think that's good. 35 is more than something like Serpent Wards, for instance. So, and it's on a hero that probably has less mana regen than Shadowhunter. I'm not totally sure on that. But 35 is still low enough to where you'll probably be able to just consistently spam it if you want. The main thing that 35 mana cost hinders for the Dark Ranger is the casting of other skills. Like if you want to use your Black Arrow or Silence alongside Life Drain, it gets a little more difficult when you're spending extra on Life Drain itself. But if you're primarily just using Life Drain, like if this is a level 1 Dark Ranger tower push, or like you pick up Dark Ranger as a second hero into a tier 2 tower push, the mana cost doesn't really matter. So to some extent, Dark Ranger's strength with the Life Drain build doesn't really care about this because it's generally going to be like your only skill and you're just pushing to end right there, right? So maybe this is like a small thing. I don't know. It honestly nerfs non-tower push Dark Ranger more than it nerfs tower push Dark Ranger, basically, right? But non-tower push Dark Ranger probably goes Black Arrow and Silence anyways. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they go Life Drain still. Anyways, the cast range actually gets a buff. So when you see those two, it's like, wait, I thought Dark Ranger is getting nerfed. But yeah, cast range actually gets buffed, so you have 100 extra range on all levels, which is a little crazy. However, this one is a big one, the tether range. So tether range is basically after you attach with your initial range. The tether range is how far your opponent essentially has to get away from your hero before it breaks the tether and you're no longer life draining, right? When you look at it overall, though, this is actually pretty big. So if you are life draining at max range, your opponent actually only has to go 100 range away, whereas before, right when you start your life drain, your opponent always has to go at least 300 range away. So this kind of makes it so you have to micro more. You have to like get closer to your opponent before casting, because otherwise the tether range is a bit too small. You might just lose your life drain right away. So you got to be careful of that. And I do think that is a pretty substantial nerf. Being able to break the tether pretty quick is pretty huge. So that being said, it mostly means the Dark Ranger player has to micro more to make sure their hero is closer to you before starting the life drain. But it's a step. I do think overall this is probably a bit of a nerf to Dark Ranger's life drain tower push style, but I think it'll still be decent if you like playing that. Anyways, I don't know if there was much else in the master change log that is different from just what seems to be the changes listed. So now we'll actually start on the changes. Yeah, these say all new changes. I don't know if they're all totally new. I think they might all just be totally new rather than adjusted changes. So we'll look at them. Rifle attack cooldown increased, which means they take longer to attack. I think that's good, but at the same time, I'm not totally positive because it's been switched. I think this change, for instance, has already been switched back and forth a couple times in the past. So, you know, they're finally nerfing it again because they consider rifles a little too strong again, I guess. And I tend to agree. I do think rifles are pretty powerful, but they do have weaknesses if the game goes too late. Usually they start to fall off. But the thing is, the human usually hits their timing and doesn't let it go that late, right? So I personally don't mind this. It's still just a small change, like 5/10 of a second or whatever is negligible in a lot of situations, especially if you're attack and then moving and attacking again to like reposition them. Then there's oftentimes this won't mean anything. Like you're not going to get any difference. Yeah, I guess they just get punished by high level heroes though. Late game is the main problem, right? In the situations where you use them. But yeah, they can still be strong. Particularly if the human is also teched up to like inner fire and stuff, right? And then I saw this change, and I noticed they did a lot of these for all the races. They're basically making master training quicker to get, which I personally don't mind. But it is kind of crazy seeing Orc, for instance, having 3 different master trainings all quite quick. And I do think Orc master training, like once Orc master casters get on the field, they feel like one of the most game changing. Like all of them can be powerful, you know, Cyclone, Talons, and Possessed Banshees, and Inner Fire Priests and stuff. They can all be powerful. But I do feel like when Orc actually gets to master, they become insanely powerful comparatively. The thing is, they usually die before they get there if they're trying to do it, right? So I guess that's maybe why they want why this might be okay. But when they do get there, I do feel like Orc is actually pretty scary. That being said, some of these or I shouldn't say some. One of them is not that big. It's like 5 seconds because it was already. I think this was already buffed previously when they did the Tauren and Walker changes. I don't know. But yeah, looking at this overall, I do think this is fine. I don't mind master training being faster across the board. I say across the board, but it looks like necromancers didn't get a buff. so that's cool. I'm glad necromancers aren't faster for master training. And then, you know, bears if you count bears, but I can understand why bears weren't changed. I don't think they necessarily needed faster because bears are already used. Um, anyways, we'll go. I don't really want to discuss this time change much because I think there's not much to say other than it's fine. I think it'll be interesting to see people attempt more master caster builds because of it, which is a good thing. And I don't think this breaks the game in any way, so fine. This one's interesting. So level 2 water elemental actually getting nerfed. I feel like this would have been wanted for like 20 years. But now I'm like, is it necessary at this point? Is this still something needed? Like, what are we talking about here? That being said, it's just 1 damage, but if you have 3 of them, each of them have 1 less damage. I don't know, maybe it adds up. There's probably a lot of situations where this is not going to change anything, but the fact of the matter is, damage nerf is meaningful. It can make your creeping speed and your timing slower. What race was doing the Dark Ranger tower push? I think it was human. Like human tier 1 or tier 2. Like I don't know the details, but I have faced people do it both on tier 1 and tier 2 as human against elf. Not sure if they do it versus other races too, but they might. I could see Orc potentially doing a tier 2 tower push with Dark Ranger second versus elf as well. I still think Dark Ranger in those situations is just going to be fine. Like this, the nerf doesn't really change anything. Like you can still do the Dark Ranger push. Like the mana cost change doesn't matter. The tether range matters a little, but just micro better lol. Make sure your Dark Ranger is closer before you cast. But yeah, this damage nerf, I'm not sure if this was necessary. I personally don't mind it because I don't mind human nerfs, but I know humans in general really don't like seeing anything of theirs nerfed ever. In fact, they want their peasants to have 500 health and fortified armor. So like, if they see 1 damage nerf, it's like the end of the world. But I don't know. I don't mind this too much, but I don't know if this was necessary either. If I had to pick one of these changes to keep, I would keep the rifle nerf and like maybe revert this back to normal. But if water elementals are actually a problem, then sure, -1 damage, whatever. The orc training, we already kind of talked about master training. This change is pretty cool. I do think healing salves were one of the main problems orc had with particularly at like mid and low level gameplay, but even at high level gameplay, one of the main problems orc had was getting caught off guard and not having enough time to healing salve. But like making it so you have the same heal, but it does it 5 seconds quicker is pretty significant. Because you will go, like, orc generally can go through, you know, 2 or 3 sets of salves in a normal, pretty fast game. If it's a long game, it might go through much more than 2 or 3 sets of salves, you know? So being able to save 5 seconds on each of those means you can, like, take damage on that unit quicker when you're creeping, or, you know, creep in general quicker, or get your blade in and out of action quicker, defend tower, or not necessarily tower, but defend harassment quicker, because, yeah. But yeah, I do think this is pretty nice. I think this is a good change. From what I know, I think Orc's actually already in a good spot currently, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something. But I do think this is good for them. I do like this change. And I do think it's like a small thing that's not gonna like make or break things, but at the same time, it's gonna make Orc feel much nicer to play when you have that like a little more leeway of your salve timings and so on, being able to get in and out of combat because they suffer from lack of healing until they have Shadowhunter. And even then, it's not till Shadowhunter's level 3 usually. And you don't always even go Shadowhunter. Sometimes you go TC second and then you rely on heal scrolls instead. So having this be better is very valuable for them. And I think it's a good change. For Night Elf, you know, we get the joke change for Night Elf. Faster build time for glove throwers. Congrats, I guess. We can feed XP 6 seconds quicker. Amazing. I don't know. I mean, this only ever helps in like Elf Mirror with Huntress Glaives or some sort of Huntress all-in against human or undead. Not against Orc. Because you wouldn't really... I mean, I guess this could technically help first Orc if you're playing against someone who's doing tower tech into Wyvern or Bats or something, right? But in general, you don't make Glaives first Orc because they're too good at punishing slow siege units and chopping them down with Windwalk Blade and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if I have to say good or bad, I think this is a good change. But at the same time, it doesn't mean anything because these are like siege units are not good in Warcraft 3. Apart from like they're not siege units are not good at siege. They're good at like hitting unarmored units. So yeah, like whatever. And then these are some big changes. So Undead, Ghoul base damage +1 is actually very significant because their damage is so low to begin with, right? Like getting +1 damage is insanely huge. That being said, it does come with a very small attack speed nerf, but the damage is more significant, right? So this is an overall damage increase, and base damage in my opinion is also slightly better than attack speed in a lot of situations because of how you kite in Warcraft. And then sometimes the attack speed doesn't matter. I don't know how to describe it, but some attack speed matters, of course, but sometimes with how you're moving the units, the attack cooldown doesn't matter compared to just the raw damage because you end up spending more time moving than the attack cooldown anyways. And then I don't know, maybe it depends on like if it affects the windup of the attack, I guess, which I don't know the details of all of that, but yeah, pretty significant that Undead is getting a ghoul damage increase. I don't necessarily know if this is good because ghouls are one of the units where if they are buffed too much, probably have like the biggest impact on the game for any race, because they are also your wood harvesters and early, like they're your early cheap unit and your wood harvester, which it's very significant whenever you can have that. And they're the race where ghouls can heal for technically free on Blight when they're sent home, which makes them very like they're very good and very efficient at creeping because the weak ones can just be swapped out with new ones that you built, that were in your base, and then the weak ones just heal for free. So, you know, small changes that make them even stronger can get out of control, but I do like that they're at least making it so if they are going, you know, if they're going to give a damage increase, they're also giving an attack speed nerf to make it not as drastic. But yeah, maybe it's good. I do know Undead has had quite a few nerfs over quite a few of the last patches for the last few years or something. So maybe this is fine. I don't know. I don't mind it too much. So it might be alright. Wand of Negation. This one's interesting. So it basically gets nerfed. There is some merit to having a cheaper cost because sometimes you don't want to pay for 4 charges to begin with. You just, you know, maybe 3 is better. Like having cheaper cost is good, but it is more costly per charge regardless. You know, it's 40 per charge instead of 30 whatever 37.5 or whatever. So technically it's more per charge, but yeah, I could see instances where maybe this is better to have the cheaper initial cost and you only need 3 charges anyways. But they attached a 5-second cooldown to it as well, which is very, very significant. Because before, like, I don't know if there was a cooldown at all before, which meant you could just spam it on like summons, right? And just immediately get rid of a summon, like a water alley or something. But if there's a 5-second cooldown now, it changes what spells you even want to use it on. You would want to use it on spells more like Entangle rather than summons that require multiple dispels. So kind of a substantial nerf. But it was probably decent. I don't know if it's necessarily overpowered though, but maybe I haven't paid close enough attention to know that for this item in particular. I don't mind the change, but if you are someone who uses this, it's probably going to be pretty annoying to have that 5-second cooldown. Frostworm build time, it's fine, I guess. Frostworms aren't like that big. And then these neutral changes are actually huge. So abolish magic damage from 250 to 150. That is crazy huge. Because I'm pretty sure this is referring mostly to Troll Shadow Priest, which is probably why Troll Shadow Priest is also talked about here. It probably affects some other creeps as well, I guess. But I'm not sure which ones exactly, like Kobold Geomancer or something, maybe. Or whatever ones have abolished magic. But like, this one is significant because you actually purchase this one as a mercenary to fight for you. So Troll Shadow Priest now has longer stock delay and replenishment delay and has a nerfed abolish magic, which makes me think you would only ever get one Shadow Priest and that's it. You know, before if you were expanding especially, you would often see people get like at least 2, if not like 3 Shadow Priests. Sometimes you even buy the Shadow Priest from like your opponent's mercenary camp as well. And it would just immediately solve a lot of problems that you have against summons, right? But now that it's at 150, like if you're looking at 2 abolishes, it's like 300 damage. That's like nothing. You know? 300 damage is like half of a level 2 water alley. Whereas before, you know, this is pretty much like a level 2 water alley kill if you use both abolishes on it. So big nerf. It is probably good, I think. It is probably good because it was definitely like Shadow Priest definitely got abused for a while with its utility. Um, and you would see both sides fighting over the initial Shadow Priest purchase. Like on Last Refuge, you would even see Orc bring a peon over to try to steal it from human so that human couldn't get it, so that the Orc could harass properly with the Farseer. And they're still going the Farseer with wolves, even on a map that has a merc camp that can one shot the wolves with abolish magic. But now it's like, wait, now the abolish magic doesn't even kill a wolf outright. you know, you have to actually get some hits off on it, let alone, two abolishes to try to kill something bigger. So, pretty substantial nerf, especially for both aggressive and defensive plays. I guess, yeah, just all around, just huge nerf. Because a lot of people wanted to use Shadow Priest to defend expansions, and a lot of people would also want to use Shadow Priest to push expansions. So I don't know. Maybe it's equal in that sense because oftentimes both sides would have summons anyways. But if both sides are getting like a nerf to this, then it's like somewhat equal, right? I don't know. I guess my main thing is I think this is actually a good change, but I don't know if it was like necessary or if it just feels weird now to do it so late into the game's life cycle. But maybe it mixes things up a bit, I guess, which is not a bad thing for a game that, has been around as long as it has. But it'll definitely be weird because you will definitely try to use abolish magic on something and it'll not kill it anymore, and you'll be like, why am I doing this? This is trash. So I don't know. It's interesting. That being said, abolish magic still has very high value against other skills that are not summons. So things like entangle. I think we talked about this at wand and negation as well, right? Because it has a 5-second cooldown. Again, these sort of changes make it so that summons are, I guess, better, which is weird in the sense that summons were already used regardless. People made summons into these, so it's not that summons were weak. But now summons are even stronger because there's a couple less ways to deal with them, right? Or less efficient ways. But it's probably fine to see through. I don't know if it's a good change, but it should be fine. You can definitely see how it plays out. They'll definitely change it up about what the priority is for mercenary purchases. Like I said, I think it'll make people only ever want to buy like one Shadow Priest, unless they need it for, like I said, entangle or something. Maybe they get more. But if they're using Shadow Priest for summons, they'd probably only get one Shadow Priest right at the start, and then they'd never want more Shadow Priest because they just feed too much XP and are just not worth their cost beyond early game, like securing an advantage by getting rid of the first couple summons, right? That are low enough health that can actually die. Yeah. And then the final change, at least I think this is the final change. I can look at the master change list after again real quick, but the final new change technically is Brewmaster Breath of Fire initial AoE increase. I think that's good. I do think the AoE nerf in general was kind of bad. I definitely didn't like seeing that for Panda because it was already primarily an elf way to deal with a lot of the things elf struggles with, such as mass air or mechanical units like gyros and tanks and stuff. So, like, taking away their main utility in dealing with that, or, by having to actually select a hero to deal with it, feels kind of bad. But, you know, they did get some, like, damage buffs in return for, like, the AoE nerfs, so maybe this starts to feel better. But this is only the initial AoE as well. It's not even, like, the overall AoE. But this is good. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's good. And then this one, kind of weird, but okay. Be, Beastmaster getting 2 extra strength. I'm not really sure what prompted this. Maybe they just thought Beastmaster was too squishy by itself or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't necessarily think this was necessary. I thought Beastmaster was already pretty solid stats wise. And obviously it's pretty strong with its summons, particularly when Bear reaches like level 2, or even Quill or Hawk can be strong situationally. But interesting. I don't necessarily know if this is good, but again, it's another change that, like, yes, it changes something, but it doesn't. I don't think it'll affect things to an astonishing degree, so it's fine to do. But I don't necessarily know if this was necessary either. So we'll see. And then yeah, master change list. I don't think there was anything else different here other than what I talked about at the start. Oh yeah, there was this as well. Banshee Possession has new visual effects. Very nice. I didn't talk about this earlier, but that is definitely a very nice change. It's been wanted for a long time, for sure. I think there were some custom games that actually had this, or maybe some sort of like mod. I think there was, yeah, I think there was some mod that maybe had this. I don't know. I want to say, someone did like a Reforged mod that had some sort of visual effects change on this. But now that it's like official, that's pretty cool. This is definitely something that has been wanted for a long time and will definitely help a lot with people being able to tell what's going on in the fights where banshees are doing something. Now, that being said, I don't know exactly what it looks like, so maybe it doesn't even actually look good. But ideally, you want it to have some sort of link, maybe just some ghostly looking link between the banshee and whatever unit the banshee is trying to possess, because you want to know which banshee is doing the possess and where they're trying to possess. And before it was just like some little dot. But hopefully this shows some sort of link more akin to Siphon and Life Train and stuff like that. But obviously it has to be like a different color, so maybe like a lightish, greenish, grayish thing. That ghostly color. I don't know exactly how to describe that color or what color it is exactly, but yeah. And then, yeah, I'm pretty sure the only other change from the previous patch was the Dark Ranger one, which we already talked about. Yeah, that's the current proposed PTR patch notes. Uh overall, I think it's good. I do think it changes things up a little. There's nothing necessarily drastic here though. Like, and unless the ghoul damage actually ends up being too significant, or the life, yeah, the Dark Ranger change. I mean, the Dark Ranger change should be good regardless, but maybe the Dark Ranger change needs to be even more of a nerf. I'm not sure. She's definitely very annoying in tower pushes, but I do think she's a bad hero in general in long games, unless it's like Undead using it with, Death Knight and Coil to support her. Yeah, the rest of the changes, I do think healing salve pretty good and significant change. It's smallish, 5 seconds is not a lot quicker, but it is quicker, which is helpful. Otherwise, yeah, overall good. Main changes to watch are the ghoul ones and maybe the abolish magic. I think the abolish magic one's fine, but it's possible this makes certain strategies less viable. Like maybe it's harder to defend your expo when you don't have access to a better abolish magic from a merc camp on certain maps. But I think it's fine. But there are probably situations where this might be bad, but there's probably also situations where it's good. So we'll see. Yeah, that has been my discussion. Like I said, overall, I think it's good changes. I think particularly these master research timing changes are. I don't necessarily want to call them good as a change, but I think they're good in the sense of it'll probably promote people to try more master caster builds, which is a good thing. But like the change itself maybe is whatever or potentially bad on a couple of them. Maybe we don't want one of these to be too fast, for instance. Maybe even not this one, but I think Cyclone Talons versus Orc has been generally considered weaker these days, anyways. So maybe that's fine. I would mostly worry about these ones, I guess, shamans and witch doctors. Yeah. Anyways, I guess mostly thumbs up for the patch.